On a cold winter evening, a young black boy is drawn into an event that will change the destiny of one of the most powerful men in the world. This is an epic story of courage, justice, and what one person can achieve. Get ready. This gripping story will move you deeply. Before we begin, don't forget to share in the comments where you watched it and subscribe to our channel for more inspiring stories. It was one of the harshest days of winter. The streets of New York City were blanketed in heavy snowfall and freezing cold. Malik Thompson, 17, was walking through the streets of Harlem, wrapped tightly in his thick coat. He had just left school and was hurrying home. His mother worked the night shift as a nurse and would be home alone. His sister Aisha was staying with a neighbor. Malik was an intelligent and idealistic young man. His father had died in a car accident when he was still young. His mother was trying to raise him and his sister by working 2 jobs as a nurse. In his spare time from school, Malik worked at a local cafe, contributing to the family budget. His biggest dream was to one day become a successful engineer and do something useful for his community. That evening he had worked overtime at the cafe. He was explaining to Carlos, a new employee, how things worked and teaching him how to treat the customers. After closing the cafe, he decided to shorten his route by driving through a neighborhood of mansion-like houses. Normally he would not have taken this route, but the snowstorm was getting worse, and he wanted to get home as soon as possible. The street was deserted and silent. Snowflakes glittered under the street lamps, and the wind howled in his ears. Malik was walking briskly with his hands in his pockets. Just then, a luxurious black car caught his attention. The car door was open, and inside a man dressed in an expensive suit was talking feverishly on the phone. The man's features were hard, his eyes determined and cold. "Listen to me, Peterson," the man shouted. "Ethics? There is no ethics in this. When the deal is done, we will be the sole masters of the market. I want all the paperwork ready before you get on the plane." Malik recognized the man immediately. This was Victor Langston, a giant of the tech world, a billionaire businessman. His ruthless business tactics and reputation for destroying his competitors were well known. Malik had done a project on him at school, a presentation on how his companies were crushing small businesses. As he tried to pass unnoticed, the wind blew a document out of the car and dropped it at his feet. Reflexively, he bent down and picked it up. It was a paper stamped "Confidential." He glanced at it out of the corner of his eye, overcome by curiosity. His eyes quickly scanned the page, and his heart began to race. The document detailed Langston's plan for a hostile takeover of MedTech, a small company developing affordable healthcare technology. Moreover, a new medical device produced by this company was vital for low-income families. This move would not only destroy the company, but also deny access to healthcare to thousands of people. Malik turned his gaze to Langston. The man was still talking feverishly on the phone, not a care in the world. Something stirred inside him. He had to stop it. Without thinking, he called out, "Hey, you can't do that!" Langston turned slowly in the direction of the voice. His eyes, shining slightly under the snowfall, focused on Malik. He said coldly, "Who the hell are you? Do you realize what you're saying?" His voice was like a block of ice echoing down the street. Malik replied, swallowing but resolute, "Yes, I am aware. I have read this document. If you carry out your plan, you will destroy the lives of thousands of people." Langston took a step forward, smiling slightly. "A document?" he said sarcastically. "Give me that document, son. It's too late to play games." Malik held the document tightly, not stepping back. "No. I will make this document public. People deserve to know what you have done." The smile disappeared from Langston's face. A stern look took its place. "A kid like you shouldn't stick your nose in my business. The consequences could be severe." "Maybe I'm just a high school student," Malik said, gathering his courage, "but I know right from wrong. People's lives should not be sacrificed to your greed for profit. At that moment, Langston's bodyguards began to approach. Two large men in black suits moved silently toward Malik. "Let's take back the document and send our young friend home," Langston said coolly, without taking his eyes off Malik. Malik stepped back, realizing the danger. His heart was racing, but he had no intention of giving in. "If you touch me, it will only compound your crime," he warned. Langston laughed wryly. "No one will believe you. Who are you?" "Just an ordinary boy. I am one of the most powerful men in this city." The guards rushed towards Malik. In a sudden reflex, Malik turned around and started running. His feet slipped on the snow-covered streets, but adrenaline propelled him forward. Behind him, he could hear Langston's shouts and the footsteps of the guards. "You can't run!" Langston yelled. "I will find you!" Malik tried to evade his pursuers by turning into a narrow alleyway. As he made his way in the weak light of the street lamps, his thoughts were jumbled. He didn't know what to do, but he knew he had to keep this document safe. He paused for a moment and tried to regulate his breathing. He looked around. The sound of the guards seemed to have receded, but he did not have much time. He had to move quickly and find help. He took the phone out of his pocket, his hands shaking. He decided to call Ms. Thompson again, but realized that his battery was low. He tried to conserve energy by turning the phone off. His priority now was to get to safety. Malik kept moving forward using the streets and back roads. The snowfall was getting heavier, but this was an advantage for him. It made it harder to track him. A glimmer of hope appeared in him. Perhaps his pursuers had lost him. But when he looked back for a moment, he saw two shadows moving in the distance. The guards were still after him. Malik took a deep breath and kept running. "I won't give up," he muttered to himself. "I will do the right thing." Malik's heart pounded in his chest as he sped through the snow-covered streets. The cold air burned his lungs, his breath escaping into the air in clouds of steam. His feet slipped from time to time on the slippery ground, but he tried to keep his balance. The footsteps of the guards behind him and their distant shouts rang in his ears. "There! He went that way!" someone was shouting. In the weak light of the street lamps, Malik turned into a narrow alleyway. He knew this neighborhood well. He had run and played in these streets since he was a child. But the darkness and snow made it difficult to see. He stopped for a moment and looked around. The sound of his pursuers was getting closer. He started moving again, but he didn't know where to go. He thought of the nearest cafe. It was a 24-hour place where students and artists usually hung out. He could take shelter there. He quickly got his bearings and kept running. The streets were almost empty, with a few cars rarely passing and people hurrying home. The lights of the cafe could be seen in the distance. Hope rose in him again. But when he looked behind him, he saw that the guards were still after him. They could be seen in the darkness with their black jackets and stiff steps. With a last burst of energy, Malik picked up his pace and ran toward the cafe. When she pushed the door and walked in, the warm air and the smell of coffee greeted her. There were a few customers inside, a woman reading a book in a corner, a man working on his laptop, and the barista at the counter. Malik took quick steps and sat down at a table in the back. He was out of breath, his heart beating fast. The barista, noticing his state of mind, approached him. "Are you okay?" she asked worriedly. "Can I have some water, please?" said Malik, his voice trembling. "Of course," the barista replied, and immediately brought me a glass of water. "Let me know if you need anything." Malik drank the water quickly and tried to calm down a little. He took his cell phone out of his pocket. The battery was low, but he still had some time. He decided to call Mrs. Thompson again. The phone rang, and he finally answered. "Malik, where are you? I was so worried," Mrs. Thompson said, her voice anxious. "I'm in a cafe," Malik whispered. "There are men after me. They're trying to find me." "Okay, calm down," said his teacher. "Give me your address. I'll be right there." Malik quickly explained the name and location of the cafe. "Please hurry," he said. "I'm on my way," Ms. Thompson replied and hung up. Malik looked around. He checked to see if the guards had gone inside. He was safe for now, but for how long? The barista came up to him again. "Would you like something to eat? You'll feel better." "No, thanks," Malik said. "I just need some rest." The barista nodded in understanding and went back to the counter. Malik looked out the window. The snow was still falling, glistening in the light of the street lamps. But he noticed two shadows moving outside. The guards were standing in front of the cafe. His heart began to beat rapidly again. He lowered his head, avoided eye contact. What would he do if the guards came in? He checked his cell phone. The battery was low. He prayed that Ms. Thompson would come. The door opened and a cold wind blew in. Malik looked up timidly. Fortunately, it wasn't the guards who had come in. A young couple came in laughing and holding umbrellas. Malik took a deep breath. After a while, the door opened again, and this time it was Mrs. Thompson who entered. He felt a great relief when he saw her. His teacher came to him with quick steps. "Malik, are you all right?" she asked, putting her hand on his shoulder. "I think so," Malik said. "But they were after me. They might find me here." "Okay, we need to get out of here now," said Mrs. Thompson. "We can use the back exit." The barista had heard them talking. "You can go out the back way," he said, coming up to them. "It's safer there." "Thank you," Mrs. Thompson said. She and Malik moved quickly to the back door of the cafe. The barista showed them the way and opened the door. "Be careful," said the barista. "I hope everything will be all right." "Thank you for your support," Malik said, and they stepped out. The back alley was darker and quieter than the front. "Let's go to my car," Mrs. Thompson said. "I'm parked nearby." "They might still be around," Malik said worriedly. "Don't worry," his teacher replied. "We will succeed together." As they moved along the street, they carefully checked their surroundings. Fortunately, there was no sign of the guards. When they reached Mrs. Thompson's car, they quickly got in and drove off. "Where are we going now?" Malik asked. "First, we need to get you somewhere safe," said Ms. Thompson. "Then we'll think about how to resolve this situation." Malik leaned back with a deep breath. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for helping me." "Of course," his teacher replied. "I am with you." As their car drove through the dark streets, Malik felt safe for a moment. But he knew that this was only the beginning. They were up against a powerful and dangerous man, but he had no intention of giving up. He would do his best to do what was right. Malik and Mrs. Thompson were silent as their car drove along the snow-covered roads. Malik stared out the window, lost in thought. The danger that followed him and the importance of the document in his hand kept running through his mind. Mrs. Thompson looked at him out of the corner of her eye and asked softly, "Are you all right?" Malik took a deep breath and nodded. "I think so," he said. "But I'm still very nervous. I didn't realize how big this was going to get." "I understand," said his teacher, "but you are not alone. We will overcome together." "Is this document really that important?" Malik asked. "Maybe I'm exaggerating." Ms. Thompson replied solemnly, "If what you say is true, this document could affect the lives of many people. It is not always easy to do the right thing, but it is necessary." After being silent for a while, Malik asked, "So what do we do now?" "First of all, we will take you to a safe place," his teacher said. "My house is nearby. We will rest there for a while, and then we will plan what to do." Malik accepted the offer. Soon after, they reached the apartment building where Mrs. Thompson lived. It was an old but well-maintained building. As they climbed the stairs, Malik made sure to check their surroundings. There was still some uneasiness in him. When they entered the apartment, they found a cozy atmosphere. Bookshelves, artwork, and family photos hung on the walls. "Make yourself at home," Mrs. Thompson said with a smile. "We can grab a bite to eat if you like." "Thanks," Malik said. "I'm actually a little hungry." "Let's go through this document one more time," said Mrs. Thompson as they prepared sandwiches in the kitchen. "Maybe there are details we missed." Malik spread the document on the table. Together they began to read it line by line. The details of the plan showed how ruthless Langston was. He planned to seize the patent on MedTech's newly developed medical device and shut down production. This device was especially vital for low-income families. "This is unacceptable," Mrs. Thompson said angrily. "We must stop this." "But how?" Malik asked. "Even if we go to the police, Langston has connections. They might not believe us." "True," said the teacher thoughtfully. "But I have a friend who is a journalist, Daniel Roberts. He's known for exposing corporate corruption. If we can reach him, he might be able to help us." Malik's eyes lit up. "Really? That would be great." "I'll call him now," Ms. Thompson said and took out her phone. A short while later, Daniel answered the phone. "Daniel, this is Sarah Thompson. We have an emergency. We need your help." The phone call was short. Daniel said they could meet right away. "Okay," Mrs. Thompson said after hanging up. "We'll be at your office in half an hour." "Isn't it risky?" Malik asked. "They might follow us." "Don't worry," said his teacher. "Daniel is reliable and his office is safe. Besides, we'll take a different route." Before setting off again, Malik looked out the window. The streets were quiet. "I think we're okay," he said. Once in the car, Ms. Thompson took a different route. They drove through the lesser-known streets of the city towards Daniel's office. Along the way, a story about Langston's company was heard on the radio news. "Victor Langston is preparing to go abroad for a new deal," the newscaster said. "Company officials say the deal will lead to a major change in the industry." Malik heard the radio report, and a shiver ran through him. "They are talking about a deal," he said anxiously. "Yes," said Mrs. Thompson. "We are running out of time. We must hurry." A short while later, they reached Daniel's office. Located on the second floor of an old building, the office looked ordinary from the outside. But when they entered, they were struck by the newspaper clippings, notes, and photographs lining the walls. "Welcome," Daniel said, greeting them at the door. He was middle-aged, with a beard and glasses that gave off an intellectual air. "Sarah, long time no see." "True," Mrs. Thompson said with a smile. "But now we have an emergency." "I see," Daniel said, becoming serious. "Who is this young man?" "This is Malik," said his teacher. "We have something to tell you." Daniel led them to a table inside the office. "Please sit down," he said. "Tell me everything." Malik described his experiences in detail, how he found the documents, his encounter with Langston and the bodyguards who were after him. Daniel was listening intently, taking notes. "This is a really big deal," Daniel finally said. "If these documents are real, Langston is in big trouble." "Here are the documents," Malik said and handed it over. Daniel examined the document carefully. "It seems to be original," he said, "but we still need to verify it. I have some sources. I can consult them." "What are we supposed to do?" Malik asked. "First, I'm going to make copies of this document," Daniel said. "We need to keep the original safe, then we will plan how to publish this story." "But we have to be careful," Ms. Thompson said. "Langston has connections. He may have infiltrated the police or the media." "Right," Daniel said. "That's why we have to act covertly. We also need to keep Malik safe. They will try to find him." "She can stay at my house," said Mrs. Thompson. "It's the safest place for now." "Good idea," Daniel said. "I'll do my research in the meantime and let you know." Malik was a little relieved. At least he was no longer alone, and there were people to help him. "Thank you," he said sincerely, "for believing in me and helping me." "We thank you," Daniel said. "It takes courage to do the right thing. You showed it." Before they left the office, Daniel gave them an encrypted phone. "Use this phone," he said. "Keep our communication secure." Mrs. Thompson and Malik set off again. On the way home, Malik thought about the future. He didn't know how this would turn out, but he would do his best. "Everything will be all right," Mrs. Thompson said, as if she had read his thoughts. "I hope so," Malik said, "but I'm still a little scared." "That's normal," said his teacher. "But remember, courage is not the absence of fear, but taking action in spite of it." Malik thought about these words and felt a strength within him. "You are right," he said with a smile. When they reached the house, they took security precautions and went inside. Malik retired to his room for some rest. It had been a long and hard day, but he knew that this was only the beginning. He had a tough fight ahead of him, but he was not alone. Malik felt a little better after taking a hot shower and putting on clean clothes. The comfort and security of Mrs. Thompson's home had relieved some of his stress. The smell of coffee from the kitchen pulled him out of his thoughts. When he walked into the living room, he saw Mrs. Thompson fiddling with documents on the table. "Did you sleep well?" her teacher asked, lifting her head. "A little," Malik replied, "but I'm still worried." "I understand," said Mrs. Thompson. "I've heard from Daniel. He has completed his research and wants to see us urgently." "Is this good news?" Malik asked hopefully. "I guess so," his teacher said with a smile. "If you are ready, we can leave now." Malik nodded. "I'm ready." When they got back in the car, the weather had cleared a little. The snow had stopped falling, giving way to a cold but clear sky. The city streets were lit by the whiteness of the night's snow. All the way, Malik and Mrs. Thompson were silent. They were both lost in their thoughts. When they arrived at Daniel's office, they realized that security measures had been increased. At the entrance, a man they did not recognize stopped them and checked their IDs. "Daniel is waiting for you," he said, directing them inside. When they entered the office, Daniel was hard at work at his computer. Various documents, graphics, and news sites were open on the screen. He stood up when he saw them. "You're here," he said, looking serious. "Have a seat, we have important things to discuss." "What did you find?" asked Mrs. Thompson curiously. Daniel began by taking a deep breath. "The authenticity of the document has been confirmed. My sources have confirmed that Langston's plans for a hostile takeover of MedTech are real. I also learned that there is a larger strategy behind this plan." "What kind of strategy?" Malik asked, concerned. "Langston plans to seize the patent on MedTech's new medical device, stop its production, and launch a more expensive version through his company," Daniel said. "This will deny low-income people access to this service." "This is unacceptable," Mrs. Thompson said angrily. "We must stop this." "I agree," Daniel said, "but the problem is that Langston has a lot of influence over the media. He's infiltrated the news channels, and he's trying to stop us from running this story." "So what do we do?" Malik asked desperately. "We'll try alternative ways," Daniel said. "I've contacted independent media outlets and we can spread the word on social media. If we get public support, we can put Langston in a corner." "Isn't it risky?" asked Mrs. Thompson. "If Langston finds out, he might make a move against us." "He already does," Daniel said, showing them the computer screen. "Look, this morning he had some fake news published about him. Supposedly he's after a group of criminals who are trying to ruin his company's reputation." On the screen was a blurry photo of Malik, with false accusations next to it. "What is this?" Malik asked in shock. "They are making me look like a criminal." "Unfortunately," Daniel said, "this is one of his tactics. He's trying to discredit us." "What are we going to do?" Malik asked, worried. "Don't panic," Daniel said in a calm voice. I was aware of the situation and took precautions. I spoke to some of my lawyer friends. We have also prepared evidence on social media to refute these false reports. You have to be strong, Mrs. Thompson said, putting a hand on Malik's shoulder. We are here for you. What we need to do now is to spread the word as quickly and effectively as possible, Daniel said, gathering up the documents on the desk. Malik, your story is very important. People will want to hear the truth from you. Me? Malik asked, surprised. But I don't know what to say in front of the cameras. Don't worry, Daniel said with a smile. We will help you. Be natural and tell us what happened. Your sincerity will reach people. Okay, Malik said, taking a deep breath. I'll try. Daniel gave instructions to his team. They arranged a live broadcast with an independent news channel. They also launched hashtags and support campaigns on social media platforms. When it was time to broadcast, Malik stood in front of the cameras. His heart was racing and his hands were shaking slightly. But he kept his eyes fixed on the camera and began to speak. I'm Malik Thompson, he said. I want to tell you the truth. I uncovered Victor Langston's plans because people's lives are at stake. The medical device MedTech developed is vital to the health of thousands of people. But Langston wants to destroy it and replace it with an expensive alternative. I couldn't stay silent about this injustice. As his speech continued, messages of support began pouring in on social media, with hashtags like Malik for Justice and a Langston Truth trending. People admired Malik's courage and said they stood with him. When the broadcast was over, Daniel and Mrs. Thompson hugged him. You did great, Daniel said. Now the ball is in Langston's court. But their joy was short-lived. Daniel's assistant rushed into the room. Daniel, we have an emergency, he said. Langston's lawyers are threatening us. They want us to take down the broadcast immediately and apologize. It was a move I expected, Daniel said coldly. They're bluffing. We're telling the truth. What if they sue? Malik asked, worried. They can open it, Daniel said, but we have enough evidence, and we have public support. At that time, his phone started ringing. Requests for interviews were coming in from different media outlets. The news spread quickly, becoming a national issue. It's a good sign, said Ms. Thompson. People are learning the truth. But the danger had not yet passed. A black SUV appeared in front of Daniel's office. Men in suits got out of it and drove towards the building. I think we have guests, Daniel said, looking out the window. We need to get out of here now. We can use the back exit, said his assistant. My car is ready. They quickly left the office and took a back alley and got into Daniel's assistant's car. Where are we going? Malik asked, his heart racing again. To a safe house, Daniel said. We'll have to hide for a while. As their cars drove through the streets, sirens and traffic noise could be heard in the background. Malik looked out the window and thought, Where is this going? He muttered. We did the right thing, Mrs. Thompson said, looking at him from the next seat. And in the end, justice will prevail. As their car drove under the city lights, Malik's mind was filled with mixed thoughts. As they drove toward Daniel's safe house, he thought about Langston's power and influence. Do you know what this man can do to us? He asked anxiously. Daniel replied in a calm voice, looking at him from the back seat. Yes, I realize that, but remember that we are not alone. We have the support of the people, and the truth always wins. We're doing the right thing, Malik, Mrs. Thompson said as she carefully steered the wheel. So you shouldn't be afraid. How far to the safe house? Malik asked, looking around. We're close, Daniel said. This house belongs to a trusted friend of mine. It will be hard for them to track us here. After a short while, they reached a detached house in a quiet neighborhood. The house was surrounded by trees, and the light from the street lamps hardly reached it. They got out of the car and hurried inside. Daniel locked the door and drew the curtains. "Now," Daniel said, moving into the living room, "we need to plan our next step." Malik sat back in the chair and took a deep breath. "Langston's moves against us are escalating," he said. "He's trying to make us look guilty." "Yes," Daniel said, "but we will also make our counter-moves. First, we need to get the evidence to a wider audience. Support is growing on social media, but we also need to reach the mainstream media." "But doesn't he control the media?" asked Ms. Thompson. "Not entirely," Daniel said with a smile. "There are some independent journalists and news channels. I've contacted them, and we've arranged a press conference for tomorrow morning." "Press conference?" Malik repeated. "What are we going to do there?" "You, Ms. Thompson, and I are going to go public with all the facts," Daniel said. "We will tell them Langston's plans, the documents we have, and the moves he made against us." "Isn't it dangerous?" Malik asked, shuddering slightly. "They might find us there." "Yes, there is a risk," Daniel said solemnly. "But we will take police and security measures. Besides, he can't hurt you in public." "I'm counting on your courage," Mrs. Thompson said, turning to Malik. "If we take this step, we can stop Langston." Malik thought for a moment. There was fear and anxiety inside him, but he also felt a strong sense of justice. "Okay," he finally said. "I will do it." "Great," Daniel said. "Then let's start the preparations." During the night, they prepared the materials for the press conference. Daniel organized copies of documents and presentations. Malik rehearsed what he would say. Ms. Thompson prepared supporting speeches. At first light, they left the safe house. In a car arranged by Daniel, they drove to the hall where the press conference was to be held. On the way, they realized that Malik's story was spreading further on the radio and television news. "Look," Mrs. Thompson said, turning on the radio, "a lot of people are on your side, Malik." An announcer on the radio said, "Young activist Malik Thompson has exposed Victor Langston's illegal plans. Malik, who has received a lot of support on social media, will hold a press conference today." Malik was a little relieved to hear this. "Maybe we can really change something," he said hopefully. When they arrived at the hall where the press conference was to be held, there was a large crowd of people and members of the media outside. Security guards directed them inside. Daniel explained the program and the order. "I'll go on stage first," Daniel said. "I will summarize the situation, then you will speak, Malik. Then Ms. Thompson and the rest of our supporters will speak." "Got it," Malik said, taking a deep breath. "I'm ready." The press conference has started. Daniel took the microphone and addressed the media and the public. "We are gathered here today to expose a great injustice," he said. "Our young friend Malik Thompson has exposed Victor Langston's illegal and immoral schemes." Then Malik took the stage. Standing in front of the crowd and the cameras, his heart was beating fast. But he kept his eyes forward and began to speak. "I'm Malik Thompson," he said. "I'm just an ordinary high school student. But a few days ago, I had a life-changing experience. I uncovered Victor Langston's plans to take over the medtech company and put thousands of lives in danger." There was silence in the hall during his speech. Malik spoke about his experiences, the dangers he faced, and why he is fighting this struggle. "I am here for justice, for people's rights," he concluded. "I could not stay silent." The crowd supported her with applause. Then Ms. Thompson and other speakers took the floor. Members of the press asked questions, and there were live broadcasts. Towards the end of the press conference, however, there was movement outside the hall. Black SUVs and men in suits appeared. Daniel noticed the situation and instructed the security guards. "Langston's men are here," he said anxiously. "We need to get out of here now." Security guards led Malik and his team out through the back exit. But there were people waiting for them outside. There was a brawl, but the police intervened, and brought the situation under control. When they got into their car, Malik was confused and worried. "This guy won't stop," he said. "He's following us." "Don't worry," Daniel said. "The whole world is on our side now. Legal action has already been taken against him." "Really?" Malik asked. "Yes," Mrs. Thompson said with a smile. "Our lawyers have filed a lawsuit. Government officials have also been notified." Malik relaxed for a moment. "I hope this will be enough," he said. "It will happen," Daniel said with determination. "We did the right thing, and we will win this fight." At first light, Malik and Mrs. Thompson awoke in Daniel's safe house. With the events of the night still fresh in their minds, they had to prepare for the challenges of a new day. "Today is an important day," Daniel said, turning to Malik, who had come in from the kitchen where he was making coffee. "We have to confront Langston before he leaves the country." "I'm ready," Malik replied, still a little sleepy but determined. "If we don't stop him, he will carry out his plans and thousands of people will be hurt." "But it's too risky," Mrs. Thompson said anxiously, sitting down at the table. "Langston's men are looking for you everywhere. What happens if they spot you at the airport?" "We have to execute our plan carefully," Daniel said, handing out the coffee. "With my journalist ID, we can gain access to the VIP terminal. The media will be there. Langston can't hurt us in front of the cameras." "What about the security guards?" Malik asked, taking a sip of his coffee. "What if they try to stop us?" "The power of the media is our advantage," Daniel said. "They will act in front of the public and the press. This will limit their moves." "Malik, are you sure?" Mrs. Thompson asked, taking a deep breath. "This is a big risk for you. Your life could be in danger." Malik nodded decisively. "We must do the right thing," he said. "If we give up now, all our efforts will be in vain." "We have to leave for the airport," Daniel said, looking at the clock. "My journalist friends will be waiting for us there." The three of them quickly finished their preparations and left the house. When they got into Daniel's car, the city had not yet woken up. The streets were quiet, the air cool. As they drove, the radio was blaring news about Langston's company. "Victor Langston is traveling abroad today on an important deal," the announcer was saying. "But the allegations against him are still in the news." "This is an opportunity for us," Malik said, listening to the radio. "The public attention is on him." "Exactly," Daniel said, carefully steering the wheel. "We can use this attention to our advantage." As they approached the airport, the traffic was getting heavy. "We'll access the VIP section with our journalist credentials," Daniel said, steering the car into a private parking lot. "Malik, you will come with me as my assistant." "Let's be careful," Mrs. Thompson warned, looking around nervously. "Langston's men could be here." When they entered the terminal, Daniel showed their ID cards to the security guards. After a slight hesitation, the guards let them through. Inside, there were a few members of the media and passengers. Langston's plane was on the private runway preparing for takeoff. Daniel approached his cameraman friend and asked, "Is everything ready?" "Yes, we can go live." The cameraman nodded. "It's about time," Malik said, taking a deep breath. "I see Langston over there." Langston was walking through the terminal towards the plane, accompanied by his bodyguards. He was wearing an expensive suit and a confident expression on his face. But there was a slight nervousness in his eyes. Malik walked towards Langston with Daniel and the cameraman. "Mr. Langston," he called out in a loud voice. Langston turned in the direction of the voice and stared in surprise. When he saw Malik, his expression hardened. "You," he muttered. "Won't you leave me alone?" "You must cancel the deal," Malik said in a determined voice. "If you get on that plane, it's over." The reporters and cameras gathered around them, recording what was happening. "Mr. Langston, what do you have to say about this young man's allegations?" Daniel asked, handing him the microphone. "I can't waste my time with these unsubstantiated allegations," Langston said with a fake smile. noticing the cameras. "I think our young friend is misinformed." "I have evidence," Malik said, without backing down. "I know your plans. You are endangering people's lives." Langston's bodyguard stepped forward and tried to block Malik, but members of the media and security guards intervened. The situation was becoming increasingly tense. "Mr. Langston, you need to answer these allegations in public," a journalist said. "Do you plan to suspend the agreement?" Langston looked at his watch with a troubled expression. "My plane is about to leave," he said. "I don't have much more time." "If you go now and finalize this deal, you risk not only your reputation, but the lives of thousands of people," Malik said in a last-ditch effort. "Do the right thing." The crowd around him cheered and clapped in support of Malik, giving him strength. Langston didn't know what to do under the pressure. "Okay," he finally said, taking a deep breath. "I'll suspend the deal, but we'll sort that out later." Daniel, seizing the opportunity, asked, "Do you publicly confirm this promise?" "Yes," Langston said through gritted teeth. "The deal will be suspended." Amidst the applause and cheers from the crowd, Malik took a deep breath with a slight smile. "Thank you," he said quietly. Langston took quick steps toward his plane, followed by his bodyguards. The cameras were still following him. Before boarding, he looked back at Malik one last time, a mixture of anger and defeat in his eyes. Malik, Daniel, and Mrs. Thompson stayed where they were for a while. "We did it," Daniel said, tapping Malik on the shoulder. "You forced him to step back." "I'm so proud of you," Mrs. Thompson said with tears in her eyes. "Your courage will give hope to many people." "This is not just my achievement," Malik said, looking around at the supportive crowd. "We all did the right thing together." As they left the airport, the media attention was still on them. Live broadcasts, requests for interviews, and messages of support came one after the other. But most important for Malik was the thought that he had saved people's lives. "What's next?" Daniel asked with a smile as they got into the car. "We will keep fighting," Malik said, looking to the future with hope. "We will not stop until justice is served." Malik took a deep breath after the confrontation at the airport. Langston's retreat had rekindled a glimmer of hope in him. But he knew this was just the beginning. The struggle was far from over. Daniel signaled his cameraman to end the shoot. "Great work, Malik," he said with a smile. "This footage will soon spread all over the country." Mrs. Thompson came to Malik and put her hand on his shoulder. "I am so proud of you," she said with tears in her eyes. "Your courage will inspire many people." Members of the media and the public surrounded Malik to congratulate him. Microphones were being passed, questions were being asked. "Malik, how are you feeling right now?" "What does it mean to you that Langston backed down?" Malik replied in a calm voice. "This shows how important it is to do the right thing. We cannot be silent when people's lives are at stake. It's not just my success, it's all of ours." The crowd erupted in applause. But in the midst of this euphoric moment, Malik's eyes caught a glimpse of a black SUV in the distance. Inside, one of Langston's bodyguards was giving him a stern look. Malik realized that the danger was not yet completely over. Daniel, realizing the situation, approached Malik. "We need to get out of here now," he whispered. "Langston's men could be watching us." Mrs. Thompson was worried too. "Yes, we need to get somewhere safe." The three of them moved quickly towards the main terminal of the airport. They disappeared into the crowd, trying to avoid the stares that followed them. Daniel pulled out his phone and texted his team. "Our security plan is in place," he said. "Our car is waiting for us at the back exit." As they walked through the terminal, they saw their own faces on the television screens. The news channels were reporting Malik's confrontation with Langston as breaking news. "Young activist Malik Thompson stops billionaire Langston," the captions read. Malik smiled slightly when he saw this. "I think our message is getting through," he said. But their joy was short-lived. As they approached the exit of the terminal, they realized that 2 guards were waiting in front of them. Daniel stopped abruptly and turned in a different direction. "This way," he said. "There is an alternative exit." Moving quickly, they entered the staff area. An employee helped them, recognizing Daniel. "You can pass through here," he said confidently. "No one will notice." When they reached the back exit, one of Daniel's team was waiting for them. "Hurry up," he said. "Langston's men are moving around." When they got into the car, Malik took a deep breath. "When will this end?" he asked anxiously. "We can't keep running." "We have to be patient," Ms. Thompson said, trying to calm him down. "When the legal process starts, they will have to back down. The important thing right now is that we are safe," Daniel said as he drove. "Besides, the media is on our side. Langston can't act openly." As they drove towards the city center, they heard on the radio news that Malik's story was spreading across the country. People were posting messages of support on social media and organizing protests. Malik's courage had inspired many. Suddenly, however, they realized that a black SUV had appeared behind them. It was approaching them fast. "I think they're after us," Daniel said nervously, looking in the mirror. Malik turned around and watched the vehicle approach. "What do we do?" he asked in panic. "I'll try to outrun them," Daniel said, turning quickly into an alley. "Hold on tight." As they sped down the narrow streets, the SUV followed. Malik's heart pounded in his chest, adrenaline rushing through his body. Mrs. Thompson closed her eyes as if in prayer. With a few sharp turns and maneuvers, Daniel finally emerged onto the main road and merged into the crowded traffic. The SUV disappeared behind them. "I think we're saved," he said, taking a deep breath. Malik leaned back in relief. "This can't go on like this," he said decisively. "We have to go to the police." "You're right," Daniel said, nodding his head. "We have to take legal action now. We have enough evidence." "We also have the support of the public," Ms. Thompson added. "They can't hide it any longer." After parking the car in a safe place, they went to the nearest police station and explained the situation. Malik gave a detailed account of what had happened and Langston's threats. They also handed over documents and media recordings to the police. "This is a very serious situation," the police officer said after listening seriously. "We will start the necessary investigations. We will also take measures for your safety." When they left the center, Malik was a little more relaxed. "At least now we have taken an official step," he said. "Yes," Daniel confirmed. "Now we will continue to inform the media and the public." That evening, television stations reported on Malik's appeal to the police station and the investigation against Langston. The public outcry was growing, and the pressure on Langston was mounting. Langston's lawyers issued a press release arguing that the allegations were baseless and that their client was innocent. However, these statements were not enough to assuage public anger. The next day, Langston's company's stock began to fall. Investors were getting worried. Partners were leaving the company. Langston was backed into a corner. Malik and his team were following these developments closely. "This is a big breakthrough for us," Daniel said, "but it's not over yet." "So what do we do now?" asked Mrs. Thompson. "We will keep fighting," Malik said with a determined expression. "We will not stop until justice is served." The next morning, as the sun rose over the city, Malik and his team knew they had a busy day ahead of them. They gathered in Daniel's office. On television screens and social media, Malik's story was spreading fast. News channels, newspapers, and websites were making headlines for the courage of a young activist standing up to a powerful businessman. "Look!" Daniel said excitedly as he quickly scanned the news on his computer. "The hashtags Jur Malik Right and For Justice are trending worldwide on Twitter." "This is incredible," Ms. Thompson said, approaching the screen. People are sending messages of support from all over the world. Malik was both surprised and happy to have made such a big impact. "I didn't think so many people would be on our side," he said in a low voice. "So doing the right thing can really make a difference." "This is just the beginning," Daniel said, turning to him. "We need to use the power of the media to our advantage. You were invited to several television programs today. You can tell your story to a wider audience." "I don't have much experience speaking in front of cameras," Malik said a little hesitantly. "But if it helps people, I'll do my best." "Just speak from your heart," Mrs. Thompson encouraged him. "Your sincerity and honesty will reach people." They went to the studio of a national news channel for the first interview. The anchor greeted Malik with a warm smile. "Welcome, Malik," she said. "Your courage and determination have inspired many. Would you like to share your story with us?" "Of course," Malik said, taking a deep breath. "It all started a few days ago. I found out about Victor Langston's plans by accident, and I couldn't stay silent if it would endanger people's lives." Throughout the interview, Malik talked about his experiences, the challenges he faced, and why he took up this fight. His voice was calm, but determined. The viewers on the screen were moved by his sincerity. On social media, the positive reactions and messages of support continued to pour in. As she left the studio after the interview, she met another familiar face in the hallway. It was Maya Rodriguez, a famous human rights activist. Maya approached Malik and extended her hand. "It's an honor to meet you," she said. "Your courage and struggle give people hope." "Thank you," Malik said, shaking his hand in surprise. "I have been following your work closely." "Maybe one day we can do projects together," Maya said with a smile. "It is important to be a voice for young people." This encounter further boosted Malik's motivation. Back at the office with Daniel and Ms. Thompson, Daniel was checking incoming emails and messages. "Many organizations want to contact you," he said. "You are being invited to conferences. They want you to speak at their youth programs." Malik was a little embarrassed by this attention. "I just tried to do the right thing," he said, "but if I can help more people this way, why not?" Meanwhile, Langston's company has issued a new press release. The company announced that they had stopped all moves against MedTech and that the issues raised by Malik would be investigated. It was also stated that Langston temporarily left his post. "It looks like the pressure is paying off," Ms. Thompson said when she read the news. "But we still have to be cautious." "Absolutely," Daniel confirmed. "Now we need to keep the momentum going and reach more people." Later that day, Malik and Daniel participated in a radio program. There, they answered questions from listeners and shared their thoughts. "Malik, what are your plans for the future?" one listener asked. "What do you plan to do after this struggle?" Malik answered thoughtfully. "My goal is to continue helping people," he said. "Maybe I can study law and fight for justice, or take part in projects where I can support young people. I don't know for sure yet, but I do know that I will not stay silent." After the program, Malik's words were reshared on social media. It had a great impact, especially among young people. Many said they wanted to be sensitive to social issues and take action like him. In the evening, when Malik returned home, his mother greeted him. "Son, I am so proud of you," she said, her eyes shining. "Your courage and integrity have changed the lives of many people." "I couldn't have done it without your support," Malik said, hugging his mother. "You always taught me the truth." "I will always be with you," his mother replied. "But please take care of yourself. This struggle will not be easy." The next day, when he went to school, his friends and teachers greeted him with applause. The school principal gave a speech praising Malik's achievement and courage. "Malik is our pride," he said. "His exemplary behavior should inspire us all." Malik was a little embarrassed by this attention, but happy at the same time. "We can all do something together," he said to his friends. We shouldn't be silent about the problems we see in our society. They came up with the idea of establishing a student club at school. This club would carry out social responsibility projects and support those in need. Malik enthusiastically supported this idea. As the days passed, Malik's story resonated internationally. Young people from different countries were contacting him, saying they wanted to start similar projects. It's now a global movement, Daniel said as he followed these developments. We can take this opportunity to do bigger projects. Yes, Malik said, looking to the future with hope. Together we can make the world a better place. Malik's struggle affected not only his own life, but the lives of countless others. The investigations against Langston's company were deepening, and media and public pressure was mounting. More and more people were hearing Malik's story and supporting him. One morning, when they met in Daniel's office, Daniel excitedly put the newspaper on the table. Look, he said, Langston has officially resigned. Langston resigns. Malik's struggle pays off. When Malik read the news, a wave of joy washed over him. Really? He asked in disbelief. It's because of you, Malik, Mrs. Thompson said, her eyes shining. Because of your courage and determination, justice is being served. We also received an invitation from MedTech, Daniel said as he checked his computer for new emails. They invite you and our team to their headquarters to say thank you and to work together. Malik was very happy about this news too. This is great, he said. We can help more people with them. When they arrived at MedTech's headquarters, they were warmly greeted by the company's CEO, Dr. Eleanor Hayes. Because of you, our company is saved, Dr. Hayes said, extending her hand to Malik. And more importantly, we can continue to help people. I just tried to do the right thing, Malik said modestly. The important thing is that people have access to the technologies they need. To this end, we would like to start a new project, Dr. Hayes said, inviting them into the meeting room. We want to collaborate with you to increase the production of affordable medical devices and make them more widely available. Daniel and Mrs. Thompson were thrilled with the offer. This is really incredible, Malik said. We'll do everything we can. During the meeting, MedTech and Malik's team developed strategies to reach disadvantaged segments of society. They planned education programs, health screenings, and awareness campaigns. At the end of the day, as he left the office, Malik couldn't hide his happiness. For the first time in my life, I feel like I've done something so useful, he said. This is just the beginning, Daniel said, turning to him. Young people like you can change the world. Meanwhile, there were new developments in Langston's situation. As a result of the lawsuits filed against him, his illegal activities were exposed, and his company was facing huge fines. Many of his employees and partners had decided to leave the company. One day, Malik received a letter that caught his attention. It was from Langston. Inside was a short note and an address. I want to talk to you. Please give me a chance. Malik shared the situation with Daniel and Mrs. Thompson. What do you think I should do? He asked. Maybe he really regrets it, Mrs. Thompson said thoughtfully. People have the capacity to change. Daniel was cautious. We have to be careful, he said. But if he really wants to fix things, we can consider it. After some deliberation, Malik decided to meet Langston. He went to the specified address with Daniel and Mrs. Thompson. The meeting place was a quiet park outside the city. Langston stood up when he saw them. He was dressed in simple clothes and had a tired look on his face. Thank you for coming, he said. What do you want to say? Malik asked in a calm voice. I realize what I did was wrong, Langston said, taking a deep breath. Because of my greed and arrogance, I have put many people's lives in danger, and I want to apologize. Is apologizing enough? Malik asked, sincerity in his eyes. How will you make amends for the harm you have done? I want to donate the remaining assets and resources of my company to MedTech and similar social responsibility projects, Langston said, pulling a document out of his pocket. I also plan to establish a foundation to support young entrepreneurs. Daniel and Mrs. Thompson were surprised to hear this offer. If you are really sincere, this could be a good start, Malik said after a moment's thought. But how do we know you'll keep your word? I deserve it, Langston said, bowing his head. But I want to earn your trust over time. Okay, Malik said, holding out his hand. Together we can work for a better future. After this meeting, Langston began to act as promised. The foundation was established. Resources were channeled into social projects. Malik and his team started collaborating with Langston on many projects. The media followed this transformation closely. Malik's story became not only a story of struggle, but also a story of forgiveness and building a better future together. Speaking at a conference, Malik said, "We all make mistakes. The important thing is to learn from our mistakes and find the right path. Working together, we can make the world a better place." Amidst the applause in the hall, Malik looked to the future with hope. His struggle had ended in victory, but he knew that the journey was not yet over. He still had much work to do, many lives to touch. Malik opened a youth center in his neighborhood. Here, he provided education and support to disadvantaged young people, helping them realize their dreams. The center organized programs in art, science, sports, and technology. One day, a new boy arrived at the center. His name was Jamal. He was quiet and withdrawn. Malik decided to take special care of him. "Hello, Jamal," Malik said, smiling. "You can feel comfortable here. What are your dreams?" Jamal answered timidly. "I want to be an engineer, but I don't know how to do it." "Believe me, anything is possible," Malik said. "I was like you. With the support of the right people, I made my dreams come true. Now it's your turn." Jamal's eyes lit up. "Really?" "Yes," Malik said. "I will help you." Malik continued to work with Jamal and other young people. He gave them education, guidance, and hope. Each of them discovered their potential and took steps towards their dreams. One day, journalists wanted to interview Malik. "Your story inspires many people," they said. "Is there anything you want to say?" Malik smiled. "There is strength in everyone," he said. "It takes courage and determination to do the right thing. If even one person can change the world, imagine what we can all do together." Over the years, Malik's work has expanded even more. He opened centers in different cities, reaching more and more young people. He gave speeches on international platforms and received awards. A journalist asked him, "What is your next goal?" Malik smiled. "My goal is to create a world where every young person can achieve their dreams. It may seem like a dream, but together we can achieve it." Looking back at this point in his life, Malik realized how important the choices he had made were. The decision he made on that cold winter evening had changed not only his life, but the lives of countless others. "Even one person can change the world," he said to himself, "as long as he believes and takes action."